Okay, it's July 10th, and we're visiting with Everett Kilmer today, and he's agreed to to this interview, and that we can put it on our website. So, Everett's going to tell us about life in Niobrara County, or some stories.
Well, I guess I should start at the beginning. I was born, yeah, really I was.
Okay.
In my great-granddad's house on my great-granddad's farm in Lincoln County, Nebraska, which his farm was 12.5 miles southwest of Arnold, Nebraska. Arnold, Nebraska is the county seat for Custer County, but being 12.5 miles southwest of there, that put us in Lincoln County, where I was born. My parents started a farm, got married in 1926 and started farming the same year. They were incredibly hard workers and good farmers, but their timing was not very good. See, the terrible crash of '29 signaled the beginning of the terrible depression. And it was also the beginning of the terrible drought of the dirty 30s. And then in August of 1932, Dad had something over 300 acres of really good corn and a field of beautiful wheat about ready to harvest. A hailstorm come up that one day, and we as a family retreated to the cellar, and my goodness, it just hailed and blew for seemed like forever to this little boy. My folks in later years said it hailed for 45 minutes.
Oh gosh.
Oh my goodness.
And the entrance to that old cellar was sheeted or covered with that old shiplap siding. It's about an inch thick on the bottom and a quarter of an inch thick on top. That hail would come right through the side of that entrance inside, and when it finally quit hailing, we stepped out, and one of Dad's cornfields come right up to the edge of the yard there, and there that great big beautiful corn was. It looked like rows of chopped silage with the corn stub sticking up through them. My mother screamed, "My God, our crops!" And Dad said, well, maybe it didn't get it all, and Mom said she could know it did. Dad went and got a saddle horse and rode around that 160 acres. Come back and said it got it all. So, being relatively newlyweds and just starting farming, they had borrowed a considerable amount of money to start farming. And the depression, the drought, and everything, that storm meant the end of their farming in that part of Nebraska. My Uncle Roscoe, my dad's brother Roscoe, had already moved to Wyoming. You see, in the beginning of the Depression down there in Nebraska, somebody put up a sign, said this way to Wyoming. Everybody that could read came to Wyoming, those that couldn't stayed there and taught school. My Uncle Roscoe had already moved up here and was working in a co-op creamery as their butter maker. And he had a friend, Albert Brock, who was an uncle to John and Charles Brock, their residents here in Niobrara County. Now, Albert Brock had a place northeast of Lutz. He was looking for a renter. Him and Roscoe got their heads together and decided Dad should move up here and rent that place. And they got Dad up here, and he looked the place over and the rent offer and everything, and decided to take it, and went back to Nebraska. And he had an old Chevy truck, and my Uncle Bill, K. DeGearens, that lives out north of Lutz, Dad had another old Chevy truck, and they moved us up here. in those 2 old trucks. And so we hid out here on the Kilmer Ranch April of 1933. And there, some of us Kilmers been there on that ranch ever since.
Where is that ranch?
What?
Where is that ranch?
12 miles northeast of Luss.
Okay.
We've added some to it. It's still a relatively small ranch, but nevertheless quite a good ranch. And my son Bruce, our son Bruce, is on that ranch today, doing a better job than my dad or I either one did, thankfully. And so the ranch is still in the family, and we're on the 3rd house. In 1954, my wife and I got married and moved on to the ranch. And then in 1948, my parents divorced after being married 22 years. That left Dad and us 4 children there alone. We stayed on the ranch till 1954 when I got married, and then I went out and took over. My wife and I stayed there 50 years till 2004. In August 10th of 2003, I had 2 serious strokes the same day, and that took care of my ranching. We moved to town and bought a nice little house here in town, and our son took over the ranch. And so here we are. I went from a workaholic to absolutely nothing overnight, and I found out what depression is and what it can do to you. That oftentimes when I was on the ranch, I wished I didn't have anything to do. That's a mistake to wish. I found out that having nothing to do is no fun either. But I'm able to read, and I have read a great deal the last 8 years, and we have a terrific library here that if they don't have a book, they'll get it for you. And I've read all I can find about homesteading, and still am reading about homesteading and history about this area, and about immediate past history, and clear back I read quite a lot of Indian history, which there is a lot of in this community. It was Crazy Horse and Sand Bull's favorite hunting grounds, plus places like Deer Creek up by Douglas. Deer Creek was his very favorite wintering spot for his people. And when you drive up Highway 20 to Casper, when you go past Deer Creek, you can see why he liked it so well. There's cover, there's fuel for their fires, good fresh water, and it would have been a lot of grass then before the white man moved in and ate it all off. And they said there was plenty of game around there. I can see why there would be, till the white man scared them away and killed them off. But it was Deer Creek, right there west of Douglas, was Crazy Horse's favorite place to winter his Oglala Sioux tribe.
Can you tell us a little bit about what Lusk was like when you've been here for quite a while?
Yeah.
How it's changed over the years and what it was like?
Well, yes. Start out when we first came to Wyoming during the Hoover boom. Our place had quite a bit of the Hat Creek breaks on it. My dad would cut wood in those breaks, haul it to town, and sell it for $3.50 a wagon load here in town.
Wow.
And once in a while I got to ride to town with Dad and a load of wood. I remember that one time we left home before daylight and got back home well after dark. And Dad stopped at Gay's Cafe, which was a little cafe down by the But what used to be the Texaco filling station, now it's Bardo's filling station. Right across the street was this little brick building that was Gay's Cafe. Two ladies run it. Most people from Lusk could tell you who they were. And I remember Dad got us each a cold beef sandwich and a glass of milk, and went to the grocery store. The grocery stores stayed open till all the business left in those days. And got a little sack of groceries and a tiny sack of candy for us kids, and had some change left over from that $3.50. The grocery now, you know, nowadays if you bought $3.50 worth of groceries, you couldn't get a sack small enough to hold. But things were different then. They were cheap, but a dollar went a long ways, but getting a hold of that dollar was the problem. So the Kilmer family have done quite well out there on the ranch, and been a happy experience for most of us. My folks divorced in 1948 after being married 22 years. And that threw Dad and us kids into a real serious predicament, but we was able to handle it and stayed there with Dad and run the ranch quite well until I got married in '54, and then I took over.
Did you have brothers and sisters, or?
I had 2 brothers and 1 sister, and us boys were outnumbered, like sisters are, you know.
Did you raise cattle or sheep there?
Well, the Kilmer Ranch has always been a cattle and sheep ranch, except once we tried raising rabbits.
Rabbits?
We kept the rabbits in the barn. If one of those rabbits would get unruly, I would shake a stick at him and he'd straighten right up, but it wasn't long till we had more rabbits than I could shake a stick at.
I suppose that didn't take too long to happen, did it?
No, it didn't.
What did you do with the rabbits?
Oh, I'm not telling the truth.
Oh, okay, you didn't, okay, all right. You didn't really raise rabbits, all right. You knew that, huh?
I suspected that.
Scratch that rabbit deal.
Yeah, it's a funny story, it stays.
That's cute.
Yes.
Tell a little bit, if you would, Everett, about the Kilmer Creamery. I have a remembrance of that.
Well,
good one.
Yes, see, there were 6 of the Kilmer boys. They all came up here they were all up here by 1935. Myron was the last one to come, and he came in '35, and he finished high school here in Lusk, graduated in 1935. And they brought my grandmother Kilmer up here, but she was asthmatic, and the doctors thought this high, dry climate would help her, which it did, except when cold, rainy weather it gave her an awful time. She died in this may not be right, but I think it was 1937 from an asthma attack. She died in the Manring nursing home, which Gerald Manring's mother, Gerald Manring's a resident of Niobrara County, Lusk in Niobrara County now. His mother ran a convalescence home here for elderly people, and she was a resident there, and when she had an asthma attack, they called Dr. Reckling, but she succumbed to that asthma attack anyhow. My granddad never did move up here. When the boys started leaving Nebraska and moving to Wyoming, he said, when you get hungry enough, let me know, I'll send you money to come home. But they never, any of them got that hungry.
But, so you had a creamery, so were there a lot of dairy farmers around here then?
My uncles had a creamery. We were never part of it. And there was 5 dairies around this area, and in 1956 I drove the bulk truck for the Kilmer Creamery, and I picked up from 13 dairies, 5 in Niobrara County and 8 in Goshen County. And well, all the Doc Klemke's milked quite a few cows. Martin Lance south of us, the Richard Lynn's family out north of us milked a whole bunch, and Lloyd and Blanche Schaefer, right out of town here where Dr. Hewitt lives, milked a lot of cows. And Paul and Bud Morgan both milked some cows.
The creamery business, it was because for a long time they just shipped them out on the train, didn't they? Milk was shipped out.
Well,
but that was earlier.
that was the sour cream for butter. Yeah, a lot of the homesteaders all had a bunch of milk cows. That's how they bought their groceries. And they would bring this cream to town and sell it to the creamery where they made butter out of it, or shipped it down east somewhere, like Norfolk, Nebraska, was a big shipping point, and other points. But everybody milked a bunch of cows. My folks always kept quite a lot of milk cows around. And Dad thought you had to milk in the dark both ends of the day, even in the summer when the days were long.
Oh. And was a longer job then than it is now on milking.
Yeah, and you didn't have milking machines then. It was all by hand.
Yeah.
So you were milking cows at 10 o'clock at night then, huh?
Yes.
In summer?
Before you got the milk separated and the calves fed and the hogs fed, it was oftentimes 10 o'clock at night. 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, you was back at it. Like everybody that milked cows, it was a full-time job, 7 days a week, 24/7 about. But it was a source of steady income for the family to live on.
When did people stop having milk cows routinely around here?
My uncles went out of creamery business here. I don't remember just when, but it would have been in the late 50s sometime, and that ended the market for whole milk, and the price of cream had gone down to starved to death prices, and most people quit then. Today, there's very few ranches even have one milk cow for their own use. But from the homestead days till late 50s, everybody that milked cows and sold cream and eggs had a bunch of chickens. I'm afflicted with telling stories, so I'll tell one more. We didn't get power at the Kilmer, electric power at the Kilmer Ranch till late in the fall of 1948. It was also late in the afternoon, the day they turned the power on at our place. And the days were getting short by then, so it was already quite dark. The hens had gone to roost. When the power came on, we had all the lights on the place turned on. The lights in the chicken house come on, and the hens got up and come outside, and in the bright yard lights, they was batting their eyes and stepping high because they couldn't see the ground, and we'd all stand around there. My mother said, "Oh dear, I wonder what those old hens are thinking." The hired man said, "I bet those old hens are thinking the same thing I think around this place every morning, damn short night."
Oh, that's a great story.
That's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
Well,
Another story?
yeah.
Okay, good.
I think it was around 1950 the organizers of the pageant started putting that on, and I was Evelyn Bonsall, Dr. Reckley, and George Gibson, all those people. I was an Indian from the very beginning until probably in 1955 I quit being an Indian, but been vitally interested in the pageant ever since. What a community undertaking and real successful undertaking. When we first started, you know, people like Carl Brock out east of town and Bill Magoon out north of town all built or acquired covered wagons and horses. The Larsons out east of town, they even had oxen teams pulling their covered wagon, and what a show it did make with all those covered wagons and ox teams. In the show of the pageant itself, the Indians burned up one of the wagons. Every show we'd burn a wagon, clear to the ground. We finally figured out all we had to do was burn up the box and save the running gears, so we didn't have to hunt up a new covered wagon every time. That saved a lot of wagons. But pageant is still quite successful, and put it on every year. I don't know where they get all the people to do it, but this community always comes forward. But I was with the pageant when they showed it in Douglas, Crawford, and Casper those years. And we always got a tremendous reception everywhere we took the pageant.
The years you showed it in those communities, did they also have it in Lusk?
Yes, yeah.
But you took it on the road.
I remember one time here in Lusk, there was a lady from England in the audience. She said, "Horses, horses, horses. Where'd you get all the horses?" She was just dumbstruck with that show. We had a lot of fun as being in one little funny story about one time there was a film crew from California came here to film the pageant. We thought we'd not get rich in making movies, but they filmed it and left, and that's the last we heard from them. But one rehearsal, Niall Simpson finished his beans before he picked up his gun when the Indians attacked. The film crew wanted us not to finish our beans before we started fighting the Indians after that. Well, ladies, unless you got some more questions, that's about all I can think of.
Well, I thank you for telling us all your story and giving us a few laughs.
You think it's all right?
I think it'll be fine.
I think it's wonderful. You told a lot of things that I was interested to learn.
Well, such a charming audience, how could I help it?
Oh, you're very nice.
We will have this out on our website, but it might be a couple weeks. We're still kind of working on the the technicalities of it, but we'll try and let you know when it's out there. So if you want to
my wife
get on a computer and listen.
My wife's a computer expert.
Okay.
I'm completely computer illiterate along with a lot of other things.
My husband is that way with the computers. He knows how to do it, he just doesn't want to. He just doesn't. When
I started school here in Niobrara County in 1935 in the first grade, they closed our country school out there in our neighborhood. So I come into town here, they started running the school bus then. So I rode the school bus and went to school here the next 12 years. I know that adds up to 13 years, but that's how long it took me to get through 12 years. I fell in love with my second grade teacher, so I took it over, stayed and took it over. They used to do that to slow students a lot more than they do today. And it was a good thing for most of us.
Did you ever stay in town during the winter months?
Yes, in winters like 1943, we had to stay in town, and for a whole 6 weeks period, the roads were blocked all that time, which was not too unusual out there in our community. And the county didn't have great big powerful snow plows like they do today. They had 2 old Austin Weston motor graders with an 8-foot V plow on them, and those old Austin Westons would hardly pull themselves down a dry road, let alone plow snow. And now they got those great big Caterpillar motor graders with a big snow plow. They can plow anything. So we would missing 6 weeks of school was not a bit out of the ordinary when you're lived in the country going to school in Lusk.
So did you just have to catch up on your work when you came back then, or?
Yes, my folks drove the school bus route out there from 1935 till I got out of school and graduated my school in 48. So I had a lot of school bus driving experience. And then my wife drove that route for 27 years out there. And now my son and his wife are driving it. So it's a tough winter country, and you really have to be dedicated to the school bus driving to put up with the weather and the roads. Now they got gravel roads or oil roads. When we drove it, my folks drove it, it was all dirt, mud, and snow and ice, and go through a car a year, or a Suburban, or whatever you was driving it with.
When you first started riding the school bus, what kind of vehicle was it?
Well, it was a man named Van Tassel drove it, and he had an great big old Chrysler car that was a great car on the highway, but it wasn't much in the country with mud and snow.
How many kids rode in that car to
Well,
school?
at that, when he was driving, we had 9 children on the bus home. And several times that community's gone down to almost no children, and then build back up to 9 or 10. I guess now it's about 9 again. Prolific bunch out there, and we were in part of the Divide community. And well, I wanted to tell you, when my dad bought the Kilmer Ranch, it had an old house set on the McCluskey place, we called it. Henry and Dave McCluskey lived there, and it had this great big old rambling 2-story house on the place. And legend had it around the community that Harry McCluskey brokered a lot of bootleg whiskey. My dad sold that house to some people here in town. Walt Martin was their name. And they moved it into the northwest part of Lusk, and it's been remodeled and other different owners till I don't even remember what house it was nowadays. But when they moved the movers moved that house away, they found a trap door in one of the closets, and under that trap door was quite a good sized hole. When they moved the house away, we found a 3-gallon whiskey jug in there, and my wife and I still have that jug. It's short, the corn cob stopper, but we still have the old crock jug, and a leather handle and all.
So remnants of the bootleggers?
So we decided to believe the legend about Harry McCluskey being a broker for bootleg whiskey.
Maybe there was some truth to it.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, by the way, the jug was empty when we found it.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
That's interesting. It had a corn stalk stopper.
Yeah. Well, I could believe it about old Harry McCluskey being a broker for bootleg whiskey. He later opened a bar in Manville, being his own best customer, the bar didn't last very long.
I remember that, the McCluskey Bar. The name rang a bell
Yeah.
with me.
He was Jerry Dole's brother-in-law.
Or was he?
Yes, and I should mention Mrs. McCluskey. She was the prettiest lady. She never went outside without her sunbonnet, long sleeves, and leather gloves, and she carried little white bottles of mentholatum. If you interrupted her out in the field or fixing fence, she would pull off her great big red scarf, dust her face and hands and all off, and then put on some mentholatum. She sure took care of herself, and she was the prettiest lady, and just wore enough makeup to be the accent her beauty. And if she caught my mother outside in the summertime without her sunbonnet, she would just scold the heck out of Mom. And my mother never took any precaution from the sun and smoked cigarettes. And unfortunately, I see pictures of my mother young. When she was young, she was quite attractive, but I can't remember my mother when she wasn't old and wrinkled. The sun and the cigarettes got her at an early age.
Mm-hmm. They'll do that.
I will.
That's true. The sun is a wicked business up here in the dryness.
Yes.
It is.
Dry climates is you have a lot